The beautiful Anthurium andreanum, or the flamingo flower. There's no secret that this is one of my favorite plants. This is the first plant that my father gave to my mother when they got engaged way back in the 80s. And the reason that he gave it to her is because the flowers look like beautiful hearts. And I think it's one of the most outstanding houseplants that you can grow. And there's a few tips that I wanted to share that you can do to get the most out of your Anthurium plants, to get the best foliage and the most long-lasting flowers. Now, I'm here in Bogota, Colombia, which is very near to where these are native to. A little bit north in the city of Medellin, these plants will grow wildly out in the native, and the climate in Medellin, in that area, it's very warm, it's very humid. I'm talking like between 65 and 80 degrees all year round, with rainfall that happens almost daily. So with those conditions in mind, you can get the most beautiful Anthurium plants growing inside your home. Now, the first key that I have found that you need to think about when you're trying to get the longest lasting flowers and the most flowers. A lot of times I'll see plants that don't have very many flowers, and why is that? Generally, that's because they don't give their plants enough light. I like to have mine right near a south-facing window. Here I have a window that faces south. This gets sunlight basically from morning until nightfall, and that is exactly the conditions that these love to have in order to get the most flowers. The second thing is that these like to stay moist. You can see here, I have this sitting in water. This type of soil medium that I have growing in is kind of like a basic growing medium mixed in with a little bit of bark to help it be very, very free draining. That's going to allow me to, I can water this almost daily, and the water just kind of flushes right through it and kind of sits in that base, and the roots soak that excess water up whenever it gets thirsty. So I always like to have mine sitting in a plastic tray where it can soak up that extra water. You can also do it as kind of like a humidity tray if you had some pebbles down here. Some people say that they don't like to keep theirs sitting in water, but I have found the absolute best results when I just let mine chill. The other way that you can go about getting that sort of humidity for your plant is, when I'm back home in the United States, I keep my Anthurium in a plastic pot. This is a plastic pot that I've just kind of decorated with some ribbon it's the holiday season here, and I thought this was a really great holiday plant because it has, the pink and the green, and it's cheery and all that sort of stuff. But back home in the United States, I keep mine in a plastic pot that I then place into a kind of like a glazed pot, and in the base of that glazed pot, there's no drainage holes. And so when I water it, the water stays in the base of that glazed pot, and it soaks up into those roots whenever it gets thirsty. Oftentimes you'll see the roots kind of growing out of the bottom. Let's see, there's some starting to poke out here, and that is a good sign. Oftentimes that's kind of like a sign that you need to repot it. But when we're talking about a water-loving plant like this, a moisture-loving plant like this, that's sitting in water, it's very great. If you do have those roots growing out, but it's not sitting in water, it will dry out too quickly. You want to have either repot it into a larger container or start to add water in the base. Now, a couple other things, kind of like general maintenance. If you click in the button up here, I have a link to a video showing exactly how to clean the foliage of your Anthuriums. The Anthurium, this and many other Anthurium, they have really beautiful, shiny, glossy foliage. And my favorite way to shine them and gloss them is with just a little bit of dab of soap and a little water, and you just kind of hand wash each leaf, and it also keeps them free of any sort of pests. Now, if you're looking at this plant and you say, oh, what's this kind of, really light colored piece of foliage? Well, this is a brand new leaf. So when these plants create new foliage, they'll often start off as a little bit lighter in color, and then as they age and mature, they'll get, like, the texture is even different. They'll get thicker as they mature, and they'll also change colors. Here you can see a flower that's just starting to open as well. They'll eventually open up all the way just like this beautiful heart-shaped flower. I forgot to mention, this is actually not a flower. This the spadix. This is comprised of all of these mini flowers along the spadix, which makes it a very interesting plant. So this is actually the flower, and this is just another leaf that is colorful. But for layman's terms, we'll just call this the flower. It's easier that way. You can see this leaf or this flower right here. When we got this at the garden center, this leaf was already kind of green. And generally, when you have foliage that looks, or flowers, foliage that look a little bit green, that is generally a sign that it didn't get enough light. So I'll leave it on because it doesn't bother me, but putting it in more light will help all of your flowers look fully colorful like this. Another thing that you will often notice is that sometimes you'll have these aerial roots growing like this. I could just easily repot it back in here if I wanted to, but I just kind of wanted to show you guys. Some people like to have them like this. They like to keep them misted and keep them, nice like that. But for me, I'm just going to cut it off. It's not really serving much, so I'll cut it off, and it's a little bit prettier in my opinion. Another thing that you'll notice is, sometimes you'll get moss or little baby plantlets growing in the base of your soil, and the reason is because whoever potted it up, whatever soil medium they were using, had little bits of life still growing. So you can, generally they're pretty unharmful, but if you don't like the way, you can just kind of like rub them off, clean them up a little bit, or remove them. Things like moss, it's not going to be any sort of harm. It really doesn't matter. But when you see little baby leaves of something else growing, I like to pluck those out because I like the continuity of the plant, and I don't want to have other little baby plantlets growing and taking the energy away. So basically, the key points to remember are they like to stay moist. You want to keep them moist as well as you can, but also growing in a very well-draining soil, a very well-draining substrate is going to be the best. You can use just normal old indoor potting mix that you buy from the store. That's generally what I use, and it seems to work absolutely perfectly. And the next thing is you want to give it lots of light, and you want to keep them in that warm environment. Like I was saying, in Medellin, Colombia, the temperatures never dip below like 70 degrees. So if you have your plant in a condition that has a lot of light and stays warm, this is going to be continually growing all year round. They can handle temperatures much cooler, down to like 50, probably even like 45, but when it dips below 70, they're going to grow a lot slower, which if you don't care, then you don't care. It's all good. But if you want to have more rapid growth, which many people do, having it in the brightest, sunniest conditions possible inside the home, in a warm environment, and keeping it moist. And like all of our houseplants, putting it outside in the summer months in a pretty sheltered area. You don't want to give it full sun outside. Keeping it outside during the summer months is also going to really amplify the speed at which these will grow. So with those cues in mind, you can have incredible success with these plants. Having flowers bloom inside the home for 12 months out of the year is very, very rare. And that is the reason why I am in love with this particular type of Anthurium. Nothing brings color inside the home to your houseplant garden like these beautiful plants. They're so easy to grow, and I know you'll have success with it. So think about adding it to your houseplant garden. Think about giving it to a loved one, and they will remember the joy that you gave them by giving this beautiful heart-shaped flower plant to them that looks good pretty much all year round. And anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends, share it to all your fellow plant lovers, and share that plant love. Anyways, I'm Devin, and I will catch you later. See ya.